excited to be here. Yeah. We're obviously quite the cluster tonight, aren't we? So happy that you guys are here. So excited to share with you guys tonight. We're going to talk about step 5. And we're going to jump right in it to make sure we have enough time because I've got some cool cats and kittens up here to talk to us. I don't know where I went to the 1950s, but that's okay. They wore cool clothes. We've got the leadership team up here to talk a little bit about step 5 because it's a doozy. And so I thought, what a fun time to pick their brain because they have some sobriety under their belts and have made it through some hurts, habits, and hang-ups, and they keep on kicking and swimming and all of that other fun stuff. So why don't you all give it up for Bobby, Adam, Kayla, and Corey. I almost got into New Edition. I really am showing my age now. Bobby, Mickey, and Mike. If I like a girl, who cares who you like? New Edition, nobody? Okay. Anyway, thank you, babe. He has always got my back. So we're talking about step 5 tonight. And just to regroup that a little, step 5 is we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. And a Bible verse that goes with that is 1 John 1:9. If we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. But that might be a hard step to talk about, and it is, which is why I've got these guys up here with me, because even though it's hard, it's pretty gratifying to be able to take a deep breath and be honest with ourselves and just, come clean about the mistakes that we've made and learning how to forgive ourselves, but not just ourselves, those that have hurt us too. And this is a great step after you've done step 4, which, is taking that moral inventory and looking at the things that happened in your life to bring you where you are today. This is where we start, starting to heal from that. So I've got a couple of 100 questions. We'll only be here till 11, I'd say. I'm just kidding. Got a couple of questions for these guys. And the first one, and I'm going to start with some of you guys, but then you all feel free to chime in when somebody's over. Briefly, we'll start with you, Bobby. So to you, why is it important to admit to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs?
Turn it on.
On.
Is that working? Is it working? Yeah.
There you go.
With me being as old as I am, I didn't get married till I was 55, so my wife had heard rumors about me through my addiction. Was only 39 years, so
That's all.
I was out there. So it was easy. God already knew. When I set my wife down, we'd only been married for a year, and I told her I just had to get honest with her without everything. I worked in organized crime for 11 years. I was a golf pro for 25. I lived a pretty jacked up life. But the main thing to do is just when I sat down and got honest with her. Everybody knew my history, everybody knew what I did, but she didn't. And after I'd sat down and talked to her, the hard part was over. And the only thing you can do is be honest. I mean, it's over and done. So I was blessed there. But I think that was the hardest thing.
I think that's good, and I think that, you mentioned that you needed to come clean with your wife. So anybody who's in a marriage or in that serious relationship, and Adam and I have had some really hard conversations, hard to hear, but be in that safe place that somebody can say, what they've done and know that it's not going to be held against them is important too.
It is, and when I was in rehab, it was something that was talked about on the daily, all day, constantly, every day. And so I was excited when I got to head home and actually implement it in my life. And I was like, well, we're about to find out. So when she and I got to actually sit down and talk and get to go through everything, we straight up said to each other, we're gonna have to clear the air and get everything out there. And I told her to ask me anything, just be prepared that you might not like some of the answers.
So I took notes of all the questions I wanted to ask.
She's like, chapter 3, what did you do? No, it wasn't that
Remember
bad.
that time? The spoons. Anybody who's been my friend knows the spoons. Thanks, babe.
With all that said, clearing the air is the best way to get everything out and get everything open, talk about things. And the best part about that is once you do, nobody can hold anything over your head. You've already talked about it. You've already gotten it out. I can't tell you how many times people have looked at me and said, man, last time I saw you looked awful. I was like, well, I was on heroin. Let me tell you about it. And just go through the spiel. And, yeah, it's always exciting to see the look of despair on their face. But, you know.
So I'm going to go this side of the room, and let's talk about that. So we've gone through the fifth, we've talked about the fifth step. So here's a double question. Why all three? Why God, ourselves, and someone else? And why the exact nature of our wrongs? Why are those words important? Kayla?
I'm going to go first because we already talked about this one. So I actually am going to reference my husband's story because he actually has the perfect one for this. Because
She got permission.
I did.
I made
got
sure,
permission.
Ryan. I made sure.
No daggers from over here. So he actually was so desperate to get out of his addiction, and he would beg God for forgiveness all the time, and he would beg God to take it from him. The problem was, though, he wasn't honest with himself or anyone else about his wrongdoings. So Satan could whisper in his ear and say, oh, well, it wasn't that bad, right? And, of course, you always want to try to be comfortable, so you fall into that. And the day that he finally came clean about everything was the day that everything in his life changed.
Beat that, Corey.
So, do you guys know why blackmail works? Right, you guys laugh because you do, right? Because people have something against you that you don't want them to say. Guess what? You confess what you've done, ain't nobody got nothing against you. Right? Yes, you are a new creation when you receive Christ. But the process, right? The reason you tell God, yourself, and another human being is so that you can be healed. I mean, it's what James says, right? James 5:16. Confess your sins one to another so that you may be healed. You're already forgiven. That's not it, right? It's the healing process within yourselves. So if you're not healing, if you're not telling people, hey, this is what's going on in my life, then you're carrying something that you don't need to carry. And really and truly, like, the main reason that this panel is happening tonight is because we had the same scenario in our leadership meeting 2 weeks ago where we all just sat there and we were like, bro, life, this is what's going on. And we all just spilled our guts in 45 minutes about what was going on. And it's like, this is perfect. This is exactly what we need to do for Step 5 is talk about the panel and what we're going through and things like that. And so that was the birth of this, and the reason that we're doing it is because we're all still going through stuff, right? Just because we're up here on the leadership team with microphones talking about Step 5 does not mean we have it all together. Amen. This is a continuous thing for us. If you're holding on to stuff, then you're hurting yourself. You're carrying around a load that you don't need to be carrying, right? I get it. It's hard to say, hey, honey, I got something to talk to you about. I've been addicted to porn for the past 2 years, and I just don't know how to kick the habit. I get it, right? That's not a conversation you want to have with your wife, because that look in her eyes, because you are the knight in shining armor, right? And then all of a sudden, that gets stripped away, and you're nothing. Guys, that's where it is. Nothing is exactly where you need to be. That rock bottom, that's where the foundation is. That's where you're going to get healing. That's where a newness is going to start.
That's good. And to piggyback off that and then to go into the next question, also be reminded that your 12 steps, your sobriety, that's yours. That's something that you need to take pride in. That's something that you need to work on for yourself. You may come into a situation where it may not turn out the way you want it to. That's their hurt and habit and hang up to deal with. One thing that you need to remember is when you go through your sobriety, when you go through your 12 steps, you are being healed. You're being healed from the inside out. And that's what's important, because you're going to be okay no matter what anything, no matter what other situation or whatever else happens. Thank you for that, Corey. So stepping into steps 4 and 5 is when we really need to look at having a sponsor and that person to talk to. One thing I will say, one thing Adam and I have always done, that sponsor, that accountability partner, please keep it the same sex. A lot of people, some people may question that, but please keep it the same sex, because what you don't want is an emotional affair to happen with somebody agreeing with you that's not your spouse. Or to get sucked, if you're single, to get sucked in that weird thing of, then that's codependency. And we do have a group for that too, though. Right.
You have to get another commitment chip.
Right. I mean,
and we
it's
just
all
start
weird.
The whole process.
Yeah. So let's talk about why that is important to have a sponsor, especially for these steps. Why can't we just talk to anybody? Adam? Oh, Bobby? You grab that microphone.
I think with me, I had, you might have known, my mentor and my sponsor was Pastor Kevin Simcoe. Not only did we meet once a week, we met twice a week. He kept me accountable. Like I said, my addiction was 38 years. I ran wide open. And so he kept me accountable each week. My wife had 2 heart attacks. His wife and him were there before I got there. We became that to the point where he knew exactly if I was lying or not lying, whatever I was doing. So I thought, with him, as I told Corey a little while ago, that's probably the greatest blessing I had when I got clean and sober. Amy just said a minute ago, that is so important, and it's underestimated, or whatever you want to say, that we have a good sponsor and a good mentor. I've been clean going on 12 years, and it never goes by that I don't talk to Kevin and ask him something stupid. And he knows that. So it's, but I think it's very important for a sponsor.
It is. So I can't tell you how many times that I've needed to reach out to my sponsor and just talk to him. I needed someone that has been there, done it. I had 6 psychologists when I was in rehab. Fans of every one of them, by the way. If you don't have a psychologist, you should look into it. But
Jumping ahead in questions.
Everyone needs a shrink.
Overachiever.
So with mine, it was I wanted to talk to someone that had been there and lived it, not just read a book about it. And it was important for me to be able to have someone that was like-minded, who is Christ-based, someone who has seen it, done it, and lived to tell about it. And I can still reach out to that person anytime I'm feeling down. And I'm going to tell you right now, everybody on this stage has that feeling all the time. We all, there's no exception. Bobby, how long have you been clean? 12 years. And he still talks to his sponsor. It's not something that I'll let go of either. It's that important. So if you don't have a sponsor, you need to get a one.
So obviously, this is somebody in your life more than just to get things off your chest. Yes. Yeah. Caleb, because of steps 4 and 5, many of us, me included, unearthed a lot of hidden feelings and pushed away things that we've tried to block out. What do we do when we want to fall back into those feelings? Because this is where you're getting really vulnerable about things and with people. And we've all spent a lot of time hiding and lying and acting like everything was okay and together. What happens when it just gets too hard?
So, obviously having a sponsor first and foremost is fantastic for those times where you can say, hey, I'm just feeling like a giant turd right now, and I can't do this. I've done all this junk to everyone in my life, and I have been so awful. And they could say, hold on, let's talk. But the one thing that I want to really point out on this is you might feel bad for a moment, but very soon you'll feel so free that it's not going to matter at all.
Agreed.
That's all I got.
I think that one of my favorite things, it annoyed the crap out of me because I was still working on some things and had a lot of anxiety about life when Adam came home from rehab, because I was stuck at home trying to act like I didn't have a problem and get it all together, and make sure that we still had a place to live and had a car, and anyway. But I still had a lot of anxiety, and I would really stress about bills. And Adam came home from rehab, and this all found glory and everything. And he was like, baby, it's okay. God's got us. What can man do to us? And there's a Bible verse, in God whose word I praise, in God I trust, I will not be afraid. What can man do to me? And I have never in my life been so attracted, yet so annoyed at the same time. But that's the difference,
That's hot. Go away.
Right? Oh, you're so sexy. Goodbye. I mean, talk to me later before, but it's so true. And that's the difference that God makes. And when you do start to heal and find that, I did some bad things, and I'm willing to talk about it. I'm willing to apologize for it, but I want to change. We're making that conscious effort to be different. So back on those heavy topics, Corey, and like Adam had brought out, talked to a lot of counselors, and this would be a good time to say we need to talk to somebody else. Can you talk about a time, or maybe you want to talk about somebody, or the fact that Faith Promise has counselors, but maybe a time a counselor helped you, and kind of talk about why our sponsors or our accountability partners aren't counselors. I mean, they're smart, they've been through what we've been through, but they aren't counselors.
So, I mean, like Adam, I had not 6. I wasn't as checked. Yeah. I had at least a couple in rehab. And honestly, so we've got 2 here on staff as well. And, I mean, I still, to this day, 8 years later, will pick their brains on certain things. Things that either I'm going through or someone that I know is going through it. It's like, hey, how would you handle this situation? Because I don't know it all, right? And if you don't ask the question, then you're foolish. And for me, like, that's not okay. Like, I lived that lifestyle. I was a fool. I was foolish. And so now I want to know. And so having Ann and Candace here on staff, man, truly a blessing, a God thing for sure, to be able to come into this environment and be like, hey, I'm pretty jacked up this week. I just need a few minutes to talk, right? And being around them and having that liberty here as a staff, I mean, I'm telling you, it is one of the best things. Like Adam said, if you don't have one, I encourage you, find one. I mean, Ann and Candace aren't going to be long-term with you. They're going to be, a few sessions, and then you'll have to find one. But it's a great starting point. It's a great starting point to figure out, what you're looking for, what questions to ask. And they'll bring stuff up that you had no idea that you were holding on to. It's crazy.
That's true. So when I was in rehab, there was one in particular. Her name was Hasia. Hey, if you're watching, shout out to California. Anyway, so a couple of my psychologists became friends with my wife. That's fun. So, I was sitting down talking to her one day, and she said, I don't think you really had a drug problem. I was like, no, I really did. She goes, no, I think something stemmed it. I think you had an anger issue, and it became a drug problem. I'm like, well, you're ticking me off, so that makes sense. But the fact of the matter is I never really thought of that. I always just thought, hey, I fell into drugs, and it got out of control, which it absolutely did. But there was something that started it all, and I just never paid any attention to it. It's always been there, and you don't ever think about it until someone says, you should look at this. But it helps. It really, really helps. I've never met anyone that doesn't need a psychologist. every one of you.
It's true. It's true. And that's for anybody who might be here as a loved one, and you may not think that you have a problem or anything. I'm not saying you do have a problem, but I'm just saying as a loved one.
I'm saying you guys have a problem. There's a reason everybody's here,
well,
okay?
who doesn't have a hurt, habit, or hang up, right?
Everybody's got some kind of hurt, habit, or hang up, all right?
Amen. Well, I started to go to a counselor when all of this was going on, and went to meetings and everything. But my counselor was the one that made me realize that, she asked me if my picker was off, talking about my choices in husbands, and I was like, he's fine. But anyway, but it was then that I realized that I had a problem with letting myself be loved. I felt like I had to be there for everybody else. So, yeah, I'm going to let anybody who wants to jump in with this one first, and then, this is deep. Are you ready? Okay. Recovery is recognizing who we are and making that sincere attempt to become what we could be. What does that mean to you? Bueller?
So for me, and I mean, 4 or 5 years ago, I wouldn't have thought this, but for me, that's becoming a pastor, stepping into ministry, right? I mean, I would have told you 8 years ago, before I went to rehab, that me being in a church was not going to be a reality. It just wasn't. I did that for, a season, and I didn't like the people there. And I thought every church was like that. I thought every person was like that. And if Christians were that way, what was the point? And so I held people to a very high standard, like especially staff people. Like I held staff people to a very high standard. And, new into Christianity, new into the Word, you just forget that people are people, man. People, like I said, you're here for a reason. Everybody's got some kind of hurt, habit, or hang up, and it doesn't matter if you're on church staff or not. There is a season of life that people are going through, right? Good or bad. You're going to have ups and downs. It doesn't matter what season of life you're in, whether you're young or you're old, whether you've got kids or grandkids. It just doesn't matter. Life is life. And so I would have told you 8 years ago that I wouldn't have stepped into a church. But I knew the moment I stepped in here that I was home and that I was never going to leave this place. And then 5 years ago, almost 5 years ago, I stepped into ministry, and that was not a reality for me. I told myself, and I told God, it's always funny, tell God your plans, and He'll show you what His are. Because I said I would never work for a church again. That was not going to be a thing for me because I didn't want to be associated with those people. And here I am, 5 years into ministry on a church staff. Man, it's been one of the hugest blessings, truly.
And I think, too, we can all look at it, all of us up here. I couldn't do this without Jesus Christ.
No, you could
And
not.
I had no. The first thing I had to do was get a relationship with Jesus Christ. And I was telling Mike a minute ago outside that till this day, I wake up every morning, the first thing I do, I say, okay, God, Bobby's way obviously didn't work. So let's try it your way again. And 12 years later, I'm still doing this. So everybody's recovery is totally different. Whatever you're doing to stay clean and sober, it's got to have a meaning or a meaning to it. So don't, the only thing I would say, I'd recommend to find a very good sponsor because it saved me a lot of headaches and wrong turns and all that good stuff. But
All right. Okay. How does taking this step? Oh, you two get to answer this one. Okay. How does taking this step deliver freedom and integrity for you? Two important words. How does this step walk you into freedom and integrity?
I got you, Adam.
How many times can I ask that one again? Different ways.
I was waiting to see how many times you're going to go.
Let's going again.
So the big thing that I will say is that whenever you're holding on to stuff, you tend to just get further into that hole. Satan really uses that against you. Like Corey talked about blackmail. I mean, that's basically what Satan's doing to you. Oh, do you remember when you did that? Yeah, you're still that same person. No, you're not. You're a new creation. And so whenever you take this step and say, okay, here's me, raw, real, out there, and you just leave it right there at the feet of Jesus. Every time you are willing to do that, that's exactly what you're doing. You're leaving it at the feet of Jesus. You don't have to pick it up anymore, and Satan can no longer use it against you because it's not you anymore.
Yeah.
Give me the mic before you drop it. That was good.
Pass. I
Do you
can't
want
top
to add
that.
to any of that?
I'm actually speechless.
Well, I'm going to. That is so weird, but I'll talk about you for a minute. So, I'm going to talk about the integrity part of this too, and saying that you're wrong, and coming clean, whatever you want to call it, but just starting to air out that dirty laundry. When we confess our sins to each other, it is that deep breath, and then if something happens the next time, you're able to remember, okay, well, I know I did that. I know that was wrong. I know that I can go to my sponsor. I know I can go to, well, in our case, each other, and, say, I'm thinking about this. If you're thinking about it, it's wrong. No, but I mean, that adds to the integrity part of it, that people can't keep going. Yeah, but remember when you did this. Yeah, but remember this. I sure do. And I am so sorry that you can't forget about it, because I know I've been saved. I know I've been washed clean, and I know I'm not that person anymore. Let me show you let me continually show you that I'm good. When Adam first came home, he had taken a lot of money and stolen a lot of things. And
Spoons.
yeah, spoons.
Would you get off the spoons?
No, we can't get off the spoons.
I got off the spoons.
You got off the spoons, but I can't let the spoons go. I'll still be driving. I'll go, those dang spoons. Anyway, but for a long time, Adam finally got a job when he got out of rehab, and he handed me his card to keep that. So, to build up that trust and everything. And anytime, I didn't even think about it, but one night, he was going to get something, and I said, he goes, here's my card back. And I said, just keep it. And evidently that was like giving him an Oscar. And, but he would bring those receipts back too, to show this is all I got, and everything else. And it wasn't that I was making him. It wasn't that I was throwing down the gauntlet saying, I don't trust you, you have to prove to me. It was that integrity of that step 5 to say, I did something wrong, but I want to prove to you that I'm a changed person. And that was him in the heart. That wasn't me making him be that way. So that's the difference to me.
No, that was as important to me as it was to her, and for me to show her. If she gave me $10 and I was going to say I was going to go back and get a pack of cigarettes, then you bet when I came back I would hand the receipt and say, count it. I don't have to count it. I don't have to count it. And I'll be like, no, you do, and it's for me too. I mean, it's for me to just show you. And then after enough time goes by, it gets to where that just kind of falls off, and you go right back into life and healing, and it's a very freeing moment. I suggest you give it a shot.
It was a respect thing that I didn't, you decided that on your own. Way to go, bud. Yeah.
Look at me killing it.
All right, I tell you what. So obviously, guys, all of y'all, I just got Southern, all y'all. This is a super hard step. And we've talked about a lot of probably very hard things, but you made it. Y'all crushing it.
Yeah,
Don't just say yeah when I ask this question. Tell me why. Are you glad you did it?
Yeah.
No.
Well,
He's still a little rebellious.
well, they gave me a month to live 12 years ago, so I had a choice to make. But it's absolutely, you look back. I made amends to people that if they took it, if they didn't take it, I made amends to them. It's up to them now. I can't help that. So I did what God wanted me to do. So it's I think we'd all be stupid to say we aren't glad what we did. Absolutely. But we're just we cannot be too. Guess the word I'm looking for.
Complacent?
I can't take anything for granted. I'm one beer from being right back out here. So I've got to be. I'm going to be one of those guys that's probably going to be the rest of my life coming on Monday night bugging Corey. So it's but that's why it makes recovery so great. We're all different. We all do different things to stay clean and sober. So anything you all may tell me could help me. So
step 5's a daily choice. You don't just you don't say, "Whoo, glad I got that off my chest. Now I'm done." Right? It's a daily thing.
Well, that's what I was about to say. So, like, the first time I did it, it was great. The second time I did it was great. The third, the fourth time, right? So this was a continuous thing that I did, especially early on in my recovery, because I wanted to know more. So the more you do this, the more you go through the 12 steps, guess what? The stronger you are, the more that gets revealed to you. So the more you get to clean out your house, the more you get to clean out your temple, which is your body, right? Your mind, your heart, your soul. You get to clean all that out. And then the sponsor I had at the time, man, we did a focus 12 steps. That's a different ballgame, man. He's like, what do you want to focus on? What do you mean? He goes, love, joy, peace, anger. I was like, let's do relationships. Yep.
Pass.
I figured out I really sucked at relationships. Really sucked at them. Not much better now. A little bit better. Process, guys. It's all about the process, right? But it's important that you do these steps. And when you do them and you become a sponsor, because that's what the last step is, right? Giving back what you've been giving, just to jump ahead. But the reason I'm jumping ahead is because when you become a sponsor, guess what? You're essentially redoing the steps again. And it's fantastic. So if you've gone through them and you're not sponsoring someone, you're messing up. Straight to you guys. You're just messing up because you're not giving back, right? So if you're walking someone through the steps, you're going through it again, and it's a whole new ballgame at that point. So when you're sponsoring someone, dude, just fantastic. One of the best things, and I lied to myself for years. So don't do this to yourselves. Don't waste years. Listen to wise advice. Lied to myself for years that, hey, I am too busy to sponsor someone because I am over a recovery ministry. I am married now. I have 5 kids. Like, I just can't do it. There's not enough time. That was a lie. And that was a whole thing that I had to step out of and confess and be like, man, I really do have time. And you really do. Guys, you just, what's priorities, right? Because you can meet early in the morning with someone, or you can meet later in the evening with someone. You guys have the time. I can promise you that. I don't care if you're working 60 hours a week, you have time to take a phone call. You have time to go have lunch with someone and listen to their story. I promise you that. It's all about what your priorities are. Because God's going to, if you give that time, God's going to magnify that time. It's the same way with tithing, right? You give God 10%, and all of a sudden, when you were struggling with finances, all of a sudden you're not. And you're like, dude, nothing's changed in my life. I am making the same amount as I was, and I've given $10,000 to God, and I'm not hurting for a house payment or a car payment or food on my table. And you're like, how is this possible? But God. But God.
Corey kind of already went into the last one, so we're going to cut him off. But you guys got any advice or reminders as to why we shouldn't give up, shouldn't give in? Because it's a hard one, and it's where we want to.
So I would say, for me, perspective. When I was young, I always wanted to be a professional musician. I always said that I'd be on stage somewhere playing and performing and having a blast. Turns out it was at a church. I just didn't realize it.
You're performing.
No, it was step 5, it's work the steps. Find a sponsor. Get someone you can talk to. It is very important. Don't give up. There's going to be times where you're going to feel like giving in. Just don't. It's not worth going backwards for. There's not a person in this room that doesn't remember the bad times. And I mean, I can't begin to tell you, I'm happier now, stone cold sober, than I ever was high as a boat gas. Thank you. I'll be here all night till 9. But yeah.
Well, I think that the important thing is to just remember who you are as you go through this. Remember who Christ made you to be, and not the lies, not the past mistakes you made. Because again, you're probably going to feel a little rough going through this, but it's not you anymore. And that's the important thing to remember. You don't know what's on the other side because you haven't been there yet, but we're all up here to tell you that it's fantastic, obviously. So keep on working your steps, lean into your sponsor, lean into other people working the program, get through it with God.
Amen. I remember, what is it? Somebody said, I'm not going to give you credit for everything. My worst day sober is still better than my best day high.
Oh, that was Chad.
Yeah. Guys, you did great. Look at you. Y'all give it up for the leadership team.